From offering $60 for a foster child to actively hoarding explicit footage involving toddlers, these predators did a lot more than break the law. Some came in thinking they were clever, some brought wild elaborate excuses, and some, well, showed up like absolutely nothing was wrong at all. But they all had something in common. They make up the 10 most disturbing predators in Takedown with Chris Hansen history. John Blake Creamer walked into that sting house looking like he didn't prepare for anything in his life. He had stained clothes, a very messy beard, and this weird, slow, confused vibe that would give anybody the ick. This man had 4 kids at home, from 2 to 8 years old, but still showed up at the sting to meet a 15-year-old he'd been texting. The moment he sat down in front of Chris Hansen, he dropped the line nobody watching was ready for. He told Hansen he once shot himself in the penis with a 380. He said it so casually too, like he was explaining a kitchen accident that happens to almost everybody.
I got shot in my dick with a 380.
Then he followed it up with,
"So it don't work right."
And genuinely thought that would help his case. And it gets even worse. He actually offered to show Chris the proof by taking off his clothes. Right after, Chris opened up the chat logs, and you can actually see Creamer's confidence melt off his face the moment he realized these aren't the texts he can just walk his way out of. So Creamer tried the strangest defense possible. He acted like shooting himself somehow made him less dangerous. It was basically, yeah, I said all that stuff, but look at this injury though. But Chris wasn't buying a single second of it. Then Creamer started rambling, talking faster, trying to explain away every message he typed. Watching him stumble over his own words is enough to make you facepalm. And just when you think he'd give up, he didn't. He blamed everything but himself. The injury, misunderstanding, he even tried to claim he wasn't actually planning anything, even though the logs couldn't be any clearer. Creamer was a weird man, but next up is someone younger, someone around kids every day for work, and somehow he still managed to make choices just as disturbing. Brandon Orr was a 28-year-old Disney lifeguard, which means this guy spent every day standing 2 feet from actual kids, making sure they didn't drown. And somehow, after clocking out the most kid-centered job on Earth, he decided to log in and target a 14-year-old. The chats were already gross, but the moment he told the girl, "It's not gonna hurt for me," yeah, this guy was cooked. When he pulled up to the sting house, you could see the panic hit him right away. He steps inside, saw Chris Hansen, and his brain went straight into nope mode. He didn't even try to talk. He just took off running like the backyard was an escape hatch. Deputies were waiting though. They chased him through the yard, but Brandon ran like he was trying to outrun his own chat logs. Well, that ended exactly how you'd expect. One of the deputies hit him with the taser, and Orr folded like a beach chair. Later in the audio interview, he tried to spin everything as a rough spot.
"Hey, I'm going through a rough spot."
He talked about regret and conscience, but all that conscience disappeared the moment he hit send on those messages. The guy tried to outrun the whole operation, but you can't outrun tasers, cops, chat logs, or Chris Hansen with a printout. Next is someone who literally name-dropped Chris Hansen in his chats, like he was talking about his favorite celebrity. Then he still showed up anyway. Matthew Bongine went after a 12-year-old girl. 12. The youngest target on this entire list. Besides being a predator, he was obsessed with something else. Or rather, someone. Chris Hansen. While texting the 12-year-old girl, he kept bringing up Chris Hansen's name. He clearly wasn't scared of getting caught. I mean, he was basically fanboying the guy whose entire job is catching people like him in the chats. Speaking of the chats, those were rough. In them, he talked about how he wanted to wait until he's 20 to lose his virginity, then immediately followed that with messages no adult should ever send to a child. He acknowledged her age over and over, and it didn't matter to him, he just kept going. When Matthew finally walked into the sting house, you could see he was tense. The moment Chris stepped out and started reading those messages, Matthew started giggling. Not even a normal laugh, that nervous, squeaky giggle people do when they know they're done for. Chris kept reading anyway, and Matthew? Well, he kept giggling As the chat logs got more graphic, Matthew tried to explain something, but every sentence he could say sounded like he was talking to himself, not Chris. By the end, he wasn't even making excuses. He was trying anything, but still driving across town after saying Chris Hansen's name in the chats? Nah, he wasn't getting out that easily. Next is someone who doesn't just cross a line, he tries to buy the kid involved, and things go downhill fast. Edmundo da Silva was a TSA officer, a job that made him trusted to check bags, scan people, and keep airports safe, which only got him to go online and try to meet someone he thought was a teen for $60. 60! That's the lowest offer on this whole list, and he thought it was quite the trick. When he walked into the Sting house, it already looked like he was overheating. There was sweat everywhere on him, and his hands were shaking. When Chris Hansen showed up and started reading the chat logs, Edmundo went straight into meltdown. He started yelling that it was all a mistake, and as if that could somehow erase the messages. Then he started waving that same $60 at Chris like the cash itself was the explanation. Deputies told him to calm down or he'd get hit with disturbing the peace, but Edmundo didn't listen. He kept pacing, spinning, and talking over everyone anyway. He was completely out of control. The podcast later dug into this, and it was almost worse hearing it. Edmundo admitted he knew what he was doing, though he wouldn't get caught, and then instantly felt shame once Chris stepped into the room. The part that hits hardest is his job. This was someone who checked families and kids every day. Someone literally trained to spot threats, and he became one. If Edmundo melted down the second the pressure hit him, Zaneller went the complete opposite direction. He sat there like a man who had already lived the same nightmare more than once. And that's because he had. Here's exactly what happened. Samuel Zaneller got in trouble with the law at 18 for sleeping with a 15-year-old. Then 8 years later, he did the same thing again, even though he was still on probation. So when he sat down in the Sting house, there was no panic, shaking, or sweating when it came to him. He was used to it. In fact, he looked like someone who had already accepted his fate the moment he woke up in that morning. Chris started reading the messages, and Zaneller didn't even flinch. He didn't even attempt to make excuses either. He didn't blame the girl or fake any silly confusion. He just sat there like, yeah, that was me. Then he dropped the line that pretty much got the whole room on mute for a few seconds. He said therapy didn't help him anyway. He said he probably belonged in prison. He also said he literally couldn't stop doing this. He said it in the same tone someone uses when they admit they can't stop eating chips at night when they plan to be on a diet. Most predators panic and try every known trick known to man. But Zaneller didn't even bother. He already knew the pattern because he lived it for years. He kept going after 15-year-olds, kept breaking probation, and kept pretending the consequences didn't apply to him. He sat in that chair like this was just another Thursday problem he'll get by. His targets were older teens, so the shock wasn't the same level as the ones who go after much younger kids, but the pattern he had made everything scarier. He knew he wasn't stopping anytime soon. Zaneller basically accepted his cycle, but the next guy, he didn't just accept it, he actually planned it like he was running a small military mission. Because, well, he kind of was. Larry Hayes was a 20-year-old Army veteran with a high security clearance at MacDill Air Force Base, and he used all that experience to go after a 15-year-old foster child. He showed up at the Sting ready. He brought a car full of Monster cans, sandwich bags, pizza boxes, and a wallet with $250, which is the highest offer on this entire list. When Chris asked for his phone, Hayes had an answer, but not one you'd expect. First off, he refused to hand it over, but then his wife called. He launched into this long, detailed explanation of him being on a fake Lowe's trip. He put more effort into the lie than most people put into actual marriage counseling. Then he did something that nobody should attempt during a Sting. He tried negotiating with Chris Hansen. He really attempted to close a business deal with Hansen. He was calm, collected, and way too confident for a man sitting in a trap house with pizza boxes in his back seat. Honestly, his whole vibe felt planned. His military training showed, just in the worst way possible. And the fact that he chose a foster child made everything worse. Foster kids are already vulnerable, and he knew that, which only means this wasn't a random move. It was thought out. He had his money ready, a story ready, a plan ready. And that level of preparation makes him way scarier than the guys who panic and fall apart the second Chris walks in. Now we move from well-planned to someone who didn't just plan. He kept offending for years, argued with everyone in the room, and even asked the cops to hit him again. Willie Merrill had been in the system for over 20 years. He first got registered back in 2002, and over time, racked up multiple violations. By 2017 and 2018, he had already shown he wasn't going to stop anytime soon. But instead of finally fixing up, he went right back to targeting a 15-year-old foster kid, thinking he had somehow escaped consequences long enough to try again. When Chris Hansen walked in, Merrill went full angry Facebook uncle. He started yelling, arguing, and insisting the evidence was somehow planted. Like Chris Hansen woke up that morning and said, "You know what would be fun? Setting up a whole sting just to ruin Willie's day." He also got all up in Chris's personal space and straight up challenged literally every detail Chris laid out, from the chat logs to the planned meeting, even though he was right there. Then things got even stranger. When deputies tried to arrest him, he actually dared them to touch him again. He was loud enough for anyone in the room to hear. It's really hard to miss that he had this tense, confrontational body language, like he knew a fight was coming and he was ready for it. A fight he definitely wasn't going to win. He didn't show even a tiny bit of remorse. He had 20 plus years of getting caught, but he didn't really learn anything. He ignored every consequence and went after a foster child again. And now, we move to someone who took planning to a seriously creepy level. Early morning drive, metal rings, multiple red flags, and to top it all off, he knew exactly who Chris Hansen was, but still walked in anyway. Trevor Walker is the type of guy you hope never asks you a single question, because he literally opened his conversation online with an underage girl with, "How much for an hour?" With that line, you'd think he'd be trying to book a haircut instead of a whole child. He pulled up to the sting at 4:30 in the morning with metal rings in his pockets, which already tells you this man wasn't here for a random friendly breakfast run. Nobody shows up before sunrise with metal rings unless something is really off. When Chris Hansen started the confrontation, Walker casually name-dropped Chris Hansen and Sheriff Grady Judd's names, like he was talking about celebrities he follows on Instagram and finally met. He knew exactly who was out there catching predators, and still got in the car anyway. When Hansen started reading the chat logs, Trevor didn't even blink. He stayed in full business mode. No fear, and definitely no guilt. Just, let's circle back in on that deal. And the calmness. Wow. Thus man was well aware of what he had walked right into, and what was coming. He got in fully aware of how illegal this was, and still treated the whole thing like a routine transaction. But here's the absolute worst part. Just like Willie Merrill, Trevor Walker's target was a foster child. Someone already vulnerable. Someone already struggling. Trevor didn't care. To her, she was more like an item he could purchase than a child. And if you thought that was bad, wait till you see this next predator. While the predators so far have had different reputable jobs, who would have known one of the leading professions in the health sector had a predator named Parminder Jaswal? This doctor weaponized professional trust in a way that'll make your stomach churn. Dr. Parminder Jaswal, age 61, wasn't known as a predator. Well, not at first. He was a trusted family doctor, but behind the scenes, he was abusing his position to take advantage of a 15-year-old girl. He sent graphic pictures to the decoy, and they agreed to meet up. Right after he walked in, he just went ahead and grabbed the decoy's butt. I guess he thought being a doctor gave him a free pass. When the handcuffs finally came out, Jaswal escalated the manipulation by what? Faking a heart attack. Yep, a fake medical emergency right there in front of the police. Meanwhile, the 3-part episode reveals his porn addiction at work, watching while on the clock, even with patients nearby. That's on a different level. Apparently, he had been using professional authority, immediate physical contact, and manipulative theatrics to cover his predation all that time. Sadly, the consequences of his actions did not match the said actions. He only lost his license and got 6 days in jail and a non-public registry. Doctors have a lot of access to vulnerable people, and Joswell weaponized that trust with zero shame. Now, we got the most disturbing of them all. Someone whose predation isn't about what he did or how he tried to somehow manipulate his way out of the situation. His was the full package. A combination of all past 9 predators. It was systematic, organized, and he had victims as young as 3 years old. Hassan Abu Halima is the one you hope you never read about in a police report. In fact, his is the kind of case investigators never forget. Investigators found his phone packaged with illegal media involving children, with victims as young as 3 years old. But he wasn't even sneaking around quietly too with it. Hassan was an active member of a Telegram CP sharing group, downloading literally everything that came through, watching it in daily cycles, and keeping up with material that showed both adults abusing children and children with children. In fact, his last viewing was literally the day before the sting. He went straight from his usual daily abuse material to plotting a real-life experience. Then came the sting itself. Hassan offered $225 for a 15-year-old foster kid, immediately going from a collector to someone who actively tried to create situations of abuse. Abu Halima tried to rationalize all of this, and that proves that he knew exactly what he was doing. What puts Hassan at number 1 isn't only the money or the attempted meetup, it's the sheer scale, the planning, and his audacity. Unlike predators targeting teenagers, he collected and consumed material depicting toddlers, maintained a daily viewing ritual, and actively participated in organized networks, and still went for an actual child. He literally went through the entire child age spectrum. When he finally went to trial in February 2025, the case confirmed him as the absolute top of Takedown's most disturbing predators. The worst of the worst. He's on a level of depravity no one else on this list comes close to. Want more videos like this? Then hit the subscribe button to stay updated and check out our other video to see the different kinds of predators Chris Hansen has exposed, inviting the most arrogant and dumb ones.